Hello, my name is Alfredo. Welcome to my piano spacetime. This is the MIDI video of my performance of Sergei Rachmaninoff's prelude Op.23 No. 7. You can find the video of my performance at the link under the video in the description notes. This video might be of your interest if you intend to study this work, as I will present a few thoughts and ideas about what I understood working on this piece of music. Let's start playing a few lines of this work and then I introduce a few thoughts. Let's start saying a few things regarding the context of this work. The preludes Opus 23 were composed by Rachmaninoff in the first years of 20th century. So we are in that time period of his life where he recovered his creativity after a time period of 4 years that followed the very harsh criticism that his first symphony met from public and critics, and that unsuccessful premiere resulted in a very hard blow to Rachmaninoff's confidence for his creativity and musical work. We read in his biography that it looks that it was very helpful for him to go through a session of hypnotic psychotherapy, and in fact we find that his second concerto has been dedicated to Dr. Tahal, that is actually the hypnotist that followed Rachmaninoff during the treatment of his difficult time period in those years. We are also, regarding the social context, in those years that are right before the first Russian Revolution. And we know that Rachmaninoff was coming from a family belonging to the Russian aristocracy, and that the class that in a way was receiving the attack by the rest of the society in the Russian country. We might plausibly imagine that the spirit of this work, that is quite full of tension, of conflict, might have been influenced or inspired, maybe unconsciously, by the inner memory regarding the difficulties that Rachmaninoff went through for his creativity crisis a few years before, or perhaps by the tension that was growing in the social context of his life at that time, or perhaps both things have contributed to generate the spirituality of this piece of music. Now let's move to the practical things that we should consider, in my opinion, when working with this work. Noticing the writing, a good way to start to kind of memorize and familiarize with the patterns in the texture is to group the notes in chords so that you take sort of snapshots of where the hand has to work for each quarter in the work. So that line that we would play is written as for the purpose of familiarizing with this intricate texture of notes, can be now played as a sequence of chords that would be something like. And this is, I think, a useful first step once again to familiarize with the keys that are under your hands throughout the long line. And also you will notice that the large majority of the score requires alternating your hands across this progression of chords, and this actually make the work less terribly difficult than what might appear when listening to it. Once this step is done, I found that actually in order to develop a better control and fluidity, the next step would be to explore in these chords what is the splitting that will help your hand to be comfortable with a particular subgroup of the chords note. What I mean to say with this? Let's take, for example, bar 4. So the first 4 notes in the left hand. If we stop feeling what happens in our hand, at least if your arms work in the same way as mine, that is not necessarily true, as our anatomic shape and leverage ratios slightly differs from person to person. However, in my particular case, what I see with this chord is that if I want now to play individually these notes, I will find a different degree of ease with each particular finger along this brief line. What I mean to say is that if I remain with the idea of keeping my hand and body, frozen in that position that would be when I play these notes in a chord. Well, if I freeze all the degree of freedom that my body have when playing notes individually, actually I will find, depending on the notes, certain level of uneasiness or little tensions that won't be a good thing when you perform the work at speed. So what I think we have to do is to explore in that particular chord position how we had conveniently to split this group of 4 notes. So an idea could be the number 5 taken individually, and of course this help to call in action the entire arm. That is quite an appropriate thing to do, considering that we are on the strong bit of the bar, and so the large and powerful muscles of the arm are, I would say, rightly the tool to be in charge for the action that instead would be completed with the peripheric movement of your pinky, a quite weak and small finger to take that note. So once again, taking advantage of my entire arm mechanism up to the finger, I will take this note individually, and then I might find easier, more comfortable to think the rest of 3 notes as a kind of all-together group where the finger control is easier, in a way more appropriate. So I am moving from that modeling of this segment as a chord with 4 broken notes to a chord that is broken in 1 note and 3 notes. And playing the 4 notes dynamically will call in a natural way an action of my entire arm that is beneficial in order to have continuity and good control of those notes. One last example. Let's take with the right hand, for example, at bar 1, the 3rd quarter, the chord would be. Now, if I want to put the individual notes in line, if I still consider them frozen in the position of my hand and arm, well, I don't find the exact same degree of easiness with each finger in that position. So, in this case, I might think about this chord like a group of 3 notes, and then the thumb. So, with my arm, I think the first portion of the chord is resulting from a single action with my arm, and then the fingers that are very close to each other in a comfortable way, they can proceed with the notes, and a bit of help with the rotation of my hand to take the G. Now, I had to do that hard, complicated, natural job of expressing with the rational concepts and words what actually is a process that you have to explore mainly with your feelings, searching in all these groups of notes that you worked out as a first step to familiarize with the harmonic and melodic patterns. So we move to the process of searching the position of ease, the further splitting to find your body in a relative comfortable situation at each step of the progression. As it is often well said, we know that the score is not the music, in the same way that a map is not the territory. But depending on the era, on the time, and on the composer also, we find more or less accurate maps that tell you how to orientate yourself on the territory. For example, if we take a manuscript from Bach, we will find actually very limited indications others than the mere notes in the manuscript. Instead, here we are in the early 20th century, and in a time where composers, since some time in general, started to pay more and more attention on the details that they would put on their map, kind of give to you as much as possible information to then lead to discover what that territory really is. And this is certainly important for the musical understanding of the score of this material, and is also, in my opinion, important to lead us into the technical exploration about what to do in this work. And this is for the fact that Rachmaninoff, as we know well, was a superior, an excellent pianist, one of the greatest masters of the keyboard of all times. He has this natural talent, and as far as I believe, looking at the way he wrote the score, he also is giving a number of suggestions that are very valid, very effective under a merely point of view of the technical, tools to work out the musical message. Let's translate in practice. Well, you will notice in the score that there is a subgrouping of the notes that we already went through before in a way. And I think that in the large majority of cases, sticking with that grouping that alternate the sticks of the notes in the bottom with the sticks on the note on the top is actually giving a very effective, a very good suggestion about how to split the notes between left hand and right hand. You will notice that in the last quarter of, let's say, most bars, you find the last quarter splitted in two halves, with the first two notes with the sticks on the top and the first two notes with the stick on the bottom. I take this as a suggestion to split that last quarter between the end. So rather than doing, for example, at bar 1, it might mean a suggestion to try doing it might look a detail, but considering the speed that the work requires and what you will be doing in the next page, that is repeating this semi-quavers long texture, but at that time alternating with your hands the long notes in the higher end of the keyboard and the long notes in the bass, taking those two notes with the left hand rather than completing the quavers with the fourth hand allows that tiny bit of extra time to get free from the keyboards and move your hand to take those long melodic notes with a tiny fraction of a second of time available, not to rush with a jump. So let's do it again in practice to be more clear, and then we'll go ahead with another thought. In here, it doesn't make such a big difference, but let's go to the next page. The right hand has some time to go to take the next note. And so on. And another thing that I might say is that you can consider those two notes in the weak quarter, in the weak semi-quarter of the last quarter of the bar as an opportunity to charge your left arm mechanism in order to get down on the first beat of the next bar. So charging and strong beat. And this gives me the chance to underline that despite the high speed and the dense writing with these quick semi-quavers, we should work always to maintain the awareness that the control of the situation cannot be at the fingers of your hand that are your peripheric extremity in the playing mechanism, but instead your entire body that eventually has the core of the controls in your brain and eventually uses the strong muscles for the fundamental beats in the bass rhythm of the musical material. So to simplify in an extreme way, we might say, to spread this concept with a bit of clarity, that my arm coming in action with the strong beats of the bar and tend to leave the periphery, the action on the remaining notes, while your arm mechanism is getting ready for the next stroke. So exaggerating what I'm saying, much more complex and interconnected. So it is not only your arm that has a role, but the rotation, the wrist, the opening and closing of your hand. And these are all those natural things that we have to maintain in action by searching for ease, naturality, and freedom while we work on this intricate texture. Now let's move to another level of analysis, of conceptualization of your work. I believe that in general, and in this piece, perhaps in a very particular and important way, it is important, can be important to develop a kind of symbolic reading or imaginative understanding of the music material. I will explain further what I mean. This is essential to avoid to misunderstand the work as a mere, fingering complicated practice or a bravura exercise, but rather not to miss the fact that we have in front a musical material dense of emotion, of sensitivity, of conflicts, and this stays beyond the threshold of the mere control of your fingers. And so, searching while working on the note by feeling the harmonies on your, feeling on what those things are reminding you in your life, in your imagination, should lead to develop a kind of imaginative frame along the entire score. And together with helping to handle your emotional expressivity during the performance, this also, I believe, helps in recovering the focus and the concentration, especially considering that for the high speed and intricate texture, inevitably there is a part of work that is quite repetitive to do on the work segment. And in those situations, it's, at least for me, very easy to lose a bit of concentration and having actually your muscles and nerves and bones to do something that your mind is in a way looking at, while instead the process should be always the contrary, with your intention be the leading part, the director, saying to the rest of your body what to do, how to adjust to achieve that musical image. So I think that this is a very important and though kind of intimate work. So I believe that is quite difficult, if not impossible, to provide from my end a kind of recipe on that. I will share with you just a couple of hints that might not work for you, and also to be clear in what I mean for a symbolic and imaginative narration of the work. Well, to me, these sounds, let's play once again. This sforzato that we meet at the very first bar, at the third quarter, and appears just there. Notice that this sforzato is not happening again in the next page, where this line is repeated exactly as it is, but with the addition of the long notes. You notice that we have the crescendo and the diminuendo sign, but without the sforzato in this moment. So, through the process of listening at this beautiful music, well, to me, I was inspired to think like that event at the very beginning. That's the actual tragic, painful event that suddenly appears in the life of our actor there. And it might be, I don't know, you can choose that as stabbing, or in a metaphorical way, a stabbing, a betrayal, but something that is inflicting a very deep and painful sorrow that might be in the body or in the spirit. And notice that the same note is kept being repeated, but without the sforzato, like what is happening here is the physical, the historical, painful action. And then there is the pain that keeps going on right after what has happened. But it's like the scene is not ended here, because there will be another stopping a few seconds after. Here it is. And here, in a way, to me, it sounds like here that we have a cry, perhaps a cry of help, or simply a cry of pain. And these very nice chords that create a transition towards the next page is a sort of loss of conscience, of hope, perhaps, and so closing the scene that has presented what tragic occurred. And now again, going ahead a little bit with this symbolic reading, we find the appearance of this long note that occurs on the top and on the bottom of exactly the same line. But as I said before, we don't have this sforzato in those particular moments. So this suggests to me that now we are in front of the narration to the memory of what has happened, and processing, elaborating that, perhaps with a friend, perhaps with your own mind that is reconsidering, reviewing what was so painful and happened to you. But those lines that maintain the pain alive in a way, but is no longer in that physical, direct sense. It's kind of an echo of a remembering. Let's continue with this imaginative map of the musical material we have in front. To me, section from bar 33 until bar 49 represents a time period of reconstruction, of restoring for our hero. It might be a physical reconstruction in restoring if we read that tragic event that appeared right at the beginning as a physical injury like a stabbing, or might be a spiritual, psychological restoring if we want to read instead that traumatic event at the beginning like something more on the spiritual and inner world of our actor. And we have seen that this restoring is not something easy to work on. In fact, it looked to me that we have two attempts that eventually, in a way, fails, and then we need to go to the third attempt to instead reach a point of actual reestablishment of energy and willpower that then will lead to stand on and face the adversity and face the dragon, in a way of saying. That would be what I think is happening from bar B52. Let's see in detail if what I'm saying makes some sense. So we are in this moment. The first attempt that ends in the deep range of the keyboard. And then again another attempt. Here something new happens. Here, after going 3 times from the top to the base, there is an actual resurgence to a point of energy reestablishment. Let's say a few things on the technical side. Basically, we are in front again to the same technical patterns that we have discussed in the first 2 pages. So once again, at first familiarizing with the harmonic position of this note, like sounds helpful to then explore further this division of the line to search those finger grouping that you can split these imaginary chords to find where the hand is in a comfortable configuration to handle with agility those few notes in the group. For instance, emphasizing the rhythm, not to get, how to say, lost in the flow of speed and of the number of notes. So and I also practice stopping with the notes where the strong beats occur. Once again. And the same things for the next lines. And a couple of notes once again on the accuracy of the score, of the map that Rachmaninoff wanted to leave to us. As basically in all Rachmaninoff's work, we find 2 types of accents in the score. One that is the sharp horizontal tip here, and this suggests the requirement of a higher degree of energy, so a stronger delivery of energy for this accent. And then we find the other type of accent, the flat line, that suggests a lower degree of force, more an underlining on the notes. So we have to consider this while studying. Another thing I would say for these lines is that you see that we start with the energetic accent, so then the flat accent that keeps occurring on the first note of the left hand groups of notes. But we can feel that the more we are playing downwards in the keyboard, we are dealing with a heavier action. And in addition, we are producing notes with a darker color. And so I think we have to pay attention, and even more probably in the next line of descending, not to lose in energy, in clarity, to maintain these simple melodic descending lines in evidence. So in our studying, we have to feel, and I think to adjust both the pencil action of the finger as well as the action of the arm, so that the heavier the notes become, the heavier the action, we don't have the risk of having these notes slipping out of the audible range, considering that there are several notes in the higher part of the keyboard occurring, overlapping these notes. Let's see once again. And another two hints. When we meet these arpeggio chords, so the first at the end of the first descent, that is, we should keep in mind that the important note in that chord that is played with two hands is actually the bass note in the right hand, that is the final note in that melodic line. So proper weight on that note and trying to reduce the energy in the rest of the arpeggio. And also I would say that to me it becomes comfortable, convenient to strike the first note with the sharp, energetic accent of the descending melodic line with a movement that is, instead of a dropping, that is the more typical action, it will be with a pushing of the arm on the finger, so something like and after that, instead, I feel it becomes, at least for me, more comfortable to return to a conventional up-down action of the arm. Then going on, we reach part 45, so we are at the end of the third descent, and it seems that now the restoring work has been successful, and there is a crescendo of energy until to a very assertive moment at bar 49. So again, the principle of studying are the same as before, so to mark rhythmically when we play slowly the beats of the bar, not to get lost in the flow. Also removing notes to concentrate well on the important beats and then filling up with the secondary notes the bar, something like and notice that the note in the top of the arpeggio is giving the direction, so it should become a very clear aim in your mind while practicing. And vice versa, we can study like now at bar 49 there is quite an integrated game between the two hands. Again, I would remove notes, starting building a rhythmical bass choreography. Starting filling notes. For the left hand, especially when it's working in the higher range here, it becomes for me comfortable to play with a push and drop. So. Here at the end, instead, I feel my body suggesting to return to a more conventional dropping right on the first note of the group of notes. Again. Filling up. And now we reach what I think is the main fight, the battle with the dragon, right? So we have the energy reestablished, the spiritual energy reaffirmed, and so we find again the line that in the first two pages was played with the two hands, now the right hand to work it out alone, and we have this arpeggio in the bass. And we notice there is a little note here, the bass well declaimed, well marked. But I wonder, I don't know the right answer, whether this is referred to the real bass notes. those notes must be played with proper energy, not to be overcome by the quick notes in the right hand. But however, considering that Rachmaninoff already marked with his flat accent those notes to make sure that you will highlight them, I wonder whether that note, the bass well marked, that in my edition appears actually starting with the first note of the arpeggio, is instead referred to the note in the arpeggio of the left hand. So. And in a way I feel that this might be the case because those notes that are between the very bass and the top semiquavers are at risk of remaining basically unheard, because also they are harmonic note quite consonant with the harmony of that measure, so they tend to be a bit overcome by the chromatic lines that are happening with the right hand. So the bass well marked to me sounds like not to lose your awareness of these notes, and for me it's kind of helpful to think of this arpeggio as a wave of crescendo, with the aim being the top note of the arpeggio that is incidentally the octave note of what you are playing with the right hand. So let's play removing notes to see what I'm saying. So let's try again, filling up a little bit. And playing together. Since now we enter in that section of the piece that is more intricate, as we don't have anymore the option of alternating the two hands. Instead, as I said, the right hand has to work out the entire semiquavers line. Well, to familiarize very well with these bars, I believe it's very effective to repeat each bars a few times until you feel very comfortable with the pattern, and then doing the same with the next bar, and on and on. And what I'm saying would be grouping two bars together and doing the same starting patterns. And let's not forget that we have a mezzo forte, so clearly there are so many notes being played and with speed, so there is a higher sonority. So I think we don't have to exaggerate with the energy when we press these keys, although the bass notes need proper degree of intensity, otherwise what is happening with the right hand and the left hand would make them disappear. So we are approaching the last section of the work. We have a new brief dramatic element, that is this line in the left hand. So let's be aware of that. It's an important element to add tension in the frame, and so must be played with sufficient intensity not to be again covered by the quick semiquavers. Now we enter in the final section of the work. We are in pianissimo. The right hand is again playing the main line of the beginning. Now he's doing that alone, and the left hand is playing a rhythmical line. So I would start studying removing notes. Establish a solid rhythmical bass line once again. Grouping together. Again. Progressively filling up a little bit. And this applies also for the rest of this line, that is and of course paying attention that in the left hand, when we have these arpeggios, the leading line is the thumb. And here I find it particularly difficult, complicated, so I would group in different ways the patterns of notes to establish a solid familiarity with this intricated line. Then going ahead, we have to study again carefully the left hand with this broken arpeggio to find confidence and fluidity in the movement. And perhaps grouping together the notes at time. The right hand should take advantage of the degrees of freedom that your arm and wrist and hand has in terms of rotation, of lowering, to integrate what your fingers alone can do. Again, removing notes and progressively filling up everything. Or playing all together the notes to kind of take snapshots of the position that helps to gain confidence in the line. And then filling up, slow at first. At bar 81, I think these slurs used by Rachmaninoff are very illustrative of the choreography for our arm and hands in the right hand. So drop here. Of course, I am exaggerating to make it evident, but also initially to gain the feeling, and then acquiring speed and naturality. Of course, these large movements become tinier and tinier. I think it's also useful to at first remove the rhythmically non-important notes in the left hand. And then the next two bars, we have the left hand with an accent on the strong beat. And so I think it's useful to practice rhythmically the frame of our rhythm in these two bars, like. And with the right finger, because we have to play these notes in the right hand, changing the finger as the chord position changes. So. And I think grouping in a way like is beneficial, at least with my hand. This is the note grouping that make these quarters more ergonomic. And pay attention that there is no accents in the right hand. So in this rhythmical exercise, I think we don't have to use a strong energy on the note, and we have to pay attention to keep it very brief. Instead, the left hand is the one that is really going deeper in the key for this accent. And then the last waterfall, this beautiful descent. Again, let's study the bass rhythm. Let's notice in the accuracy of the writing that there is an accent on each main beat of these quarters, except in the last quarter of bar 86. And even on the very last note of this descending line, on the C we have no accents. And I also noticed the way it is written in my score that I have groups of 4 notes from here in the right hand, keeps going with the left hand. And I noticed that it's very interesting. For me, it becomes uncomfortable to play the last 4 notes with the right hand, as I did with the groups of notes in the upper quarters, but instead it is written, I guess, by Rachmaninoff. He's suggesting to play the first 3 notes with the right hand without having your elbow pushing on your torso in an uncomfortable way, and taking the last semiquavers with the left hand, that means to land on the final C with the 5, the weak finger, but interestingly on a note that doesn't have any accent mark. So for me it was necessary to break up this long line in little cells and practice the rhythmical choreography on little segments of it, like and then the final line, it is marked fortissimo, always marked, sempre marcato, but interestingly, Rachmaninoff writes two strong accents here and on the last C before the C major chord. So to me this is clearly a request of in the overall energy of all this chord to put emphasis on those particular chords there, and probably getting engaged with our body, even with our head, helps a little bit to remind this and performing this convincingly. I hope you found this presentation interesting and you enjoyed it. So I wish you to enjoy your study and your practice on this work, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.